Oh, and that's a funny video of Gavin Newsom. I got to show y'all that one. I got to show y'all that one. Hold on. But I want to just put this on.
Function. And no other country has anything like this. 2/3 of American adults and children suffer from chronic health issues. 50 years ago, that number was less than 1%. So we've gone from 1% to 66%.
Did y'all hear that? Let me run it back. Don't trip.
Adults and children suffering mitochondrial dysfunction. There were people who had immune system collapse, who had mitochondrial dysfunction, and no other country has anything like this. 2/3 of American adults and children suffer from chronic health issues.
2/3 of American adults suffer from chronic health issues.
50 years ago, that number was less than 1%.
50 years ago, that number was less than 1%. Do y'all understand? We went from less than 1% of adults suffering from these chronic health diseases to over 66%. Who is talking about this? This is what I don't understand. Okay, cool. Abortion's an issue. All right, we're going to make abortion an issue. How is this not an issue if we're talking about health? We are allowing our American citizens, our neighbors, ourselves to die. We are bringing in kids into this world, into an unhealthier world than the one that we were brought up in. How is that fair to the kids? How is that fair to the next generations? But we just sit back. Nobody's willing to call out the Food and Drug Administration. Nobody's willing to call out Big Pharma. Nobody's willing to call out all these organizations that benefit from us being sick and unhealthy. This is why I'm glad he's going to get a larger platform. And to be totally honest, I'll be real. Trump is taking a risk by just bringing him on, and I don't mean a risk from the people. Because I do think that a lot more people are going to support Trump based on RFK Jr. supporting him. So I'm not talking about the people, but he's taking a risk with a lot of his donors, with some very important, or I don't want to say important, but with some very powerful people that benefit from us being sick. The healthcare industry is one of our biggest industries. I think he's going to even talk about it. Don't quote me, but I believe that we spend more money on dealing with chronic health diseases. We put more money into that than we put into our military. So now we're living in a country where we have unhealthy people that now they're supposed to compete. And if we have to actually go to war, we're supposed to compete on the same physical, mental level, spiritual level as some of these other countries where we know that they are in much better shape. And we also understand now that our body, that our physical directly impacts our mental, directly impacts our spiritual. So now we have people that are unmotivated to go to the army. Even if we did a draft, we got so many unhealthy people that are not in physical shape, mental shape, or spiritual shape. But we feel comfortable. This is not an issue that candidates bring up. We're okay with this. And this is because we live in a privileged state, because we have not, our generation, my generation at least, has not gone to war. Matter of fact, my parents didn't go to war. So now, because we live in a generation where the majority of people living right now have not gone to war, have not experienced these type of things, we don't even consider the fact that our military is so much smaller. We went over this. Our military is like half the size of a lot of these other countries. China, I believe North Korea. Let me make sure that I'm saying it right? That's North Korea, not South Korea, right? The one that we have issues with. Our military is much smaller. Do we not factor this in? Let's keep going.
So we've gone from 1% to to 66%. In America, 74% of Americans are now overweight or obese, and 50% of our children. 120 years ago, when somebody was obese, they were sent to the circus. There were case reports done about them. Obesity was almost unknown.
Did you hear what he just said? People used to be sent to the circus for being obese. And shout out to Lizzo. Shout out to Lizzo. Because Lizzo in the past has made it seem like, oh, I could be big. I can push all this up. Have y'all seen Lizzo recently? Have y'all seen some of the workout videos that she's been posting about all of her weight loss? Lizzo, now just keep pushing that to all the people as loud as you were saying that it's okay to be obese. It's okay to be my body, whatever, however I. Cool. Did you hear what RFK Jr. is saying?
They were sent to the circus. There were case reports done about them. Obesity was almost unknown. In Japan, the childhood obesity rate is 3%.
In Japan, the childhood obesity rate is 3%. I'm going to say that again because I want you to pay attention to what RFK Jr. is about to say. In Japan, the obesity rate for children is 3%.
Compared to 50% here.
It is 50% here. How can we have leaders that do not discuss the health of our children, the health of our adults? I mean, obviously, it's impacted a lot when what you're doing as a child. How do we not have people bring up the fact that there's 3% obesity amongst children in Japan compared to 50% here? This goes along with the weak male leadership. This is weak male leadership. Y'all probably wondering like, damn, he keep getting at these men. Who should set the tone on physical fitness, in my opinion? And ladies, y'all too, because depending on what type of role you have, and anybody can listen, whatever role fits you best for you and your family, your partner, whatever it is, cool. I'm just speaking from a traditional perspective. Ladies, you play a role in it as well, because in a lot of ways, you're the one picking out the cooking, going to the grocery store. I go to the grocery store too. I cook, but let's just, can we not have like a whole sexist thing? Oh, well, the guy can do this. Okay, cool. Can we get beyond that just so I can make a point? Fellas, from a physical standpoint, setting the standard on how strong a child should be, on wanting a child to be able to look to their dad and say, my dad's the strongest man in the world. I want to be strong. So now that kid wants to take their physical health in a serious way. Ladies, controlling what are we feeding our kids? How are we nourishing our kids? It's funny how everybody cares about one issue. Oh, abortion, their right to the, but we don't care about our kids growing up healthy. We don't have a responsibility to leave the society, the world that we're growing up in a healthier place than the one that we inherited. Talking to the fellas specifically about this, we don't feel like that's not a responsibility or a burden that we proudly take on.
Half of Americans have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. When my uncle was president, I was a boy. Juvenile diabetes was effectively non-existent. A typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes during his entire career.
A typical pediatrician would see one case of diabetes during his career of how many years?
40 or 50 year career.
40 or 50 year career.
Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic or.
Today, 1 out of 3 kids is diabetic or pre-diabetic. How did we allow this to happen? Can we put it on anything other than poor leadership?
Pre-diabetic and the mitochondrial disorder. It caused diabetes, also causing Alzheimer's, which is now classified as diabetes.
Didn't know that. Do we care about the well-being of our elders? Are we upset that now we have this epidemic of cognitive defecting disabilities? I don't know how I said that. Of diseases that clearly impact our cognitive abilities. Alzheimer's. I don't know if you guys have any grandparents, aunts, uncles that have dealt with Alzheimer's. It's not a fun thing to watch. It is one of the saddest things that you can witness. And we don't even pay attention to the fact that this is more of a recent thing as far as the numbers of people that it's impacting. We don't care. Why? Because Trump's like Hitler. Why? Because Kamala's an AKA. I don't know. Like, I don't know why we don't care about this. I don't know why when we wake up in the, first thing in the AM, that we will do all these things. We'll be miserable when we wake up because we got to head to work. We got a commute that we hate. We got a boss that we dislike. We got colleagues we can't stand being around. But we will commit to it for 8 hours of the day to put food on our table. So that way we can nourish ourselves. But we will have no thought throughout the day of actually doing anything that positively impacts our health and well-being. Matter of fact, we'll make decisions throughout the day that go the opposite. We're going to take the elevator or the escalator, even though we see the stairs right next to it. We're going to choose to get the fried food, the processed foods, the stuff that we know is unhealthy and it's just going to cause us diseases, rather than to go get something organic, to go get a salad, to go get something not fried, to go get some good meat, to actually make something at home and then bring it to work maybe. Every day we are deciding, we're sitting at the desk. Get a stand-up desk. Stand up every 10 minutes. Do some push-ups every hour or so. I don't know. But throughout the day, we're making decisions that we know are leading to the decline of our health. And we don't care. Why? Because we are a society that is controlled by idols. We are an idolatry society. What do I mean by that? Unless our idols do it, unless the people that we look up to, the influencers that we look up to, unless they do it, unless they talk about it, we are not concerned with it. It's just how it goes.
And it's costing this country more than our military budget every year. There's been an explosion of neurological illnesses that I never saw as a kid: ADD, ADHD, speech delay, language delay, Tourette syndrome, narcolepsy, ASD, Asperger's, autism. In the year 2000, the autism rate was 1 in 1,500. Now autism rates...
Hold on. Let's go back. We got to hear these numbers.
Asperger's, autism.
Who even knows all these names and understands and can make the connection between, well, I don't know where he's going. Let me actually not put words in the mouth. I know that there's been a huge connection between a lot of these conditions and these vaccinations. And maybe that's why they just want to call him an anti-vaxxer. Maybe they're just trying to get ahead of it because they know that there's a connection. I've seen a bunch of documentaries and I've spoken with a bunch of people that make a clear connection between the vaccines that are given to our kids and a lot of these conditions that we did not have before we started giving out vaccines at this level that we give them out.
In the year 2000, the autism rate was 1 in 1,500.
1 in 1,500 was the autism rate in the year 2000.
Now autism rates in kids are 1 in 36.
Wait, there's no way I heard that right.
Autism, and the narcolepsy, ASD, Asperger's.
No way I heard that right.
In the year 2000, the autism rate was 1 in 1,500.
1 in 1,500.
Now autism rates in kids are 1 in 36.
1 in 1,500 to 1 in
CDC
36?
nationally. Nobody's talking about.
You know, RFK Jr., I don't know if y'all been hearing his new slogan. Matter of fact, I wasn't even going to mention it. I don't have it written down, so I may get it a little bit messed up. His new slogan was, when we care more about our kids, when our love for our kids overpowers our hatred for each other, then we can have a positive society. That's not the exact quote, but that was my takeaway from it. When we care more about our kids than our hatred for each other, then we can move on and elevate society.
This. 1 in every 22 kids in California has autism. And this is a crime.
1 in every 22 kids has autism in California. For all those that are watching, most of you probably don't have autism. Maybe you know somebody that is autistic. Maybe you have a family member, friend, whatever it may be. Just think about how unfair it is. How unfair it is to bring kids into this world where in 2000, it was 1 in 1,500 kids being diagnosed with autism. And now it's 1 in, I believe they said 30 something. And then in California, it's 20 something he just mentioned. How do we not assume responsibility and ownership and accountability with that? How do we not ask questions? We have it can only come from, like, think about this. When we think about a lot of these conditions, do we think that is it God, that's making our kids autistic? Okay, so if it's not God, let's rule that out. What could it possibly be? It has to be something that we are putting into our bodies, right? Like seriously, if more and more people are getting sick, more and more people are obese, more and more people are developing autism, it has to be based on something that we're putting in our body, right? So why should he be called a conspiracy theorist when he wants to just look into the things that are being put in our body, whether it's the food or whether it's the vaccines? When it says a lot about our country and our society when the people that speak directly on the topics that RFK Jr. is speaking on and has a care for it and a background of actually doing those things, when we look at him as loony and the crazy guy, and we get his family to come out and speak against him, that says a lot about the world that we're living in. I don't understand anything that he said so far, why somebody would listen to it and disagree or get angry or upset. What has he said that's even up for debate? What has he said that can rub you the wrong way?
Crisis that 77% of our kids are too disabled to serve in the United States military. What is happening to our country? And why isn't this in the headlines every single day? There's nobody else in the world that is experiencing this. This is only happening in America. About 18%. And by the way, there has been no change in diagnosis, which the industry sometimes like to say. There has been no change in screening. This is a change in incidence. In my generation, 70-year-old men, the autism rates are about 1 in 10,000. In my kids' generation, 1 in 34. I'll repeat, in California, 1 in 22. Why are we letting this happen? Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? These are the most precious assets that we have in this country. How can we let this happen to them? About 18% of American teens now have fatty liver disease.
Yeah. This is a legendary speech. If you didn't watch this speech in its entirety, I recommend you going back and watching it. It's not going to be as smooth as a Barack Obama speech. It's not going to appease you or smooth as a Bill Clinton speech. It's not going to be that. It's not going to be pandering talk. It's just going to be what needs to be said and what needs to be discussed. Coming from somebody who has a voice issue, you know, due to a disease, I believe, or a condition, it's going to come, it's not going to sound good, you know, depending on what you find pleasing to your ear. But if you look at the substance of what he's talking about in this press conference, this speech, these are things that we do not typically hear politicians or anybody talk about. I recommend you going back and looking at this, because what I also want to share with you before we wrap up is, and I'm going to share, matter of fact, I got to share this video because a lot of people are looking at like, what's the strategy? What is he doing? RFK Jr., there's a reason why he's staying on the ballots in the non-battleground states. There's a reason why this is. And I want to share, hold on. I want to share something with y'all before we wrap up. There's one video that Maya sent over that I want y'all to check out. Hold on one second.